there is a selling of dollar-denominated debt. So you're seeing that the bond market is going down.
In today's video, we dive into Ray Dalio's insights on the shifting landscape of global economic power, particularly focusing on the future of U.S. sanctions and their impact on the global economy. Dalio explores the dynamics of capital wars, the risks associated with holding cash and debt, and the strategies nations and individuals might consider in a world of rising inflation and geopolitical tensions. Join us as we unpack these complex issues and understand how they could shape the future of global economic dynamics. Stay tuned.
Right now, debt is dollars. Any currency, the way you hold it is you hold it in the form of debt. You don't hold it just in paper. And because there's a rising inflation, and because there's a lot of printing of money, and because there's also a greater fear on a number of countries that they too could be sanctioned, there is a selling of dollar-denominated debt. So you're seeing that the bond market is going down. That's right. And so there is that dynamic that's going on. The capital wars are the ones that accelerate immediately before the military wars. Usually the coffers are empty, they're printing a lot of money, and then they're trying to use economics as a weapon. So we're in that part of the cycle. Now, in terms of how this will transpire, I think there are three big questions that we're going to learn about and get answers to pretty quickly. The first is, does Putin and Russia win or lose? I'll describe win as what he wanted at the outset, which is win for Russia would be to have the Ukraine be some non-threatening position, such as a neutrality, a guaranteed neutrality, and for Russia to have control over eastern provinces, and for Russia not to be economically devastated, instead to be maybe have something like a 10 or 12% decline in GDP, and for Putin to be in power. If those four things happen, then the cost of his actions will have been worth the what was obtained from that, and that would be viewed as a win. It would be then also a loss from the Western countries. The world is looking at the power of American sanctions because American sanctions are the greatest power the United States has. If it was a military power, the world has come to the position that a number of countries have had an equal ability to do harm to the United States militarily as the United States was have to do to them. And so we don't have a dominant military power anymore. Wow. But we do have a dominant sanctions power. So if
we're still ahead of China?
In the United States, in the ability to influence, have economic sanctions is much ahead because it controls the world's reserve currency. That's a biggest asset. But in weaponizing the dollar, it is leading those to get around and not want to hold dollars because they get worried that they're going to be confiscated. So, so we will see if that dollar sanctions power, we'll see how powerful it is. If it isn't very powerful, that's going to be a problem.
Because others will perceive our weakness.
Well, and they'll also realize then you only have military power. I mean, think about this way. If this war is not a difficult war for the United States and Europe for the most important, it produces higher oil prices and the like. But while Russia is throwing in military, we are throwing in sanctions. And these sanctions don't cost lives. It's not a military war. So we're fighting it with sanctions, and they're fighting it with military. If you didn't have that, how would you fight this war? It would be a much more difficult situation. And the third thing that we're seeing is how the world is lining up. The world is lining up, which, there are in wars, typically Axis and allied powers. And you could see by the actions that are taken as to which are lining up. Who voted in favor of what at the United Nations? Who is allowing what rules? Who is trading with the other party? Russia actually put out a list who are friendly and adversarial countries. You'll see at the next G20 meeting who will be in favor of Russia attending that meeting and who will be in favor of it not attending. And that's making clear how the sides are lining up. So you're seeing those sides line up, and all sides are in preparation for war. Well, first thing is you realize that holding cash and dead assets is a bad thing. So a lot of money is in cash because people think that cash is the safest investment. But they are measuring that in the amount of money that they get, nominal returns, and they say it doesn't wiggle much. But think about it. It's lost, as of the most recent statistics, 8.5% over the last, inflation is 8.5%, and they receive virtually no interest rate in cash. And so there was an 8.5% loss of buying power as a result of inflation. And so psychology should change, and is in the process of changing, to realize that you have to think in terms of buying power, not the number of dollars you have. And you have to think how much is your buying power. And so the worst thing is to be in cash. Like I say, cash is trash, and to be and to be out of the bonds. The next thing is to have a diversified portfolio of assets. The diversification means some assets that are inflation hedge prone. For example, you're better off to own an inflation index bond than a regular bond. Yes, and inflation index bonds, because their returns are tied to inflation. Yeah, I think the punchline is, if you take a look at it, it's simple. It's like a regular bond, except its payments are linked to the inflation, so they compensate you for inflation. It's one type of asset. Now, flooding into any one thing is an issue, but moving from the nominal bonds, in which the government just says, I'll give you this amount of money, and it has the unbelievable and unlimited ability to print the money it gives you, it would favor inflation index bonds. And it could be other assets. Some people would say something in terms of cryptocurrencies, or it might be those other assets. I think that too much people pay too much attention to one at the extreme of the other. That either somebody's all crypto, or they're all gold, or they're all something. And I believe that that's a challenge. I think that crypto, like gold, is not a productivity earning asset, and it can be controlled by governments in lots of ways. It's been outlawed in a number of places, and it also can be monitored. The privacy element is not secure from governments doing monitoring, and so And the size of crypto is about the size of Microsoft. It's all crypto combined. And so to be overly concentrated in it, in my opinion, is a mistake. But to have some of it is a good thing. So the question is always what amount of it. So that's I have a little bit about it. I'd probably shock you about how little I have. You would shock me about how much you have, but having some of it. So the and other things I would say is that geographic location is important. In other words, not just all in U.S. and U.S. dollar assets. I would say that the three things that again I'm looking at if I go down countries is first, are they earning more than they're spending? Do they have a good income statement and balance sheet? This is going to be very important in the period ahead because the amount of credit that's going to be available to bridge the gap between spending and earning, cash flows and so on, is going to be quite narrower. So a lot of companies even that were able to raise cash and not have good cash flow because of maybe growth expectations in the future will find it more difficult. That'll be true for individuals. It'll be true for countries. So does it have a good income statement and balance sheet will be important. The second is places. How are they working with each other? Is there civility or is there civil war, on the brink of civil war? Because countries where they work well together, they're productive, are going to have a real competitive advantage. Orderly places, safe places to be. Well, there are parts in the United States that are better than other parts of the United States. I'm now talking about the like where you want to be, and then that'll be. But yes, it could be bonds, it could be places. I'm talking now the places. For example, we just had the shooting in New York City on the subway. And New York City's becoming more dangerous. Chicago's becoming more dangerous. San Francisco's becoming more dangerous. You're seeing people leave some places for other places. You're seeing them leave, I don't know, to Texas as Austin, or to Florida and so on. So there are differences within the United States and differences from the United States.